Hello, and welcome to the Akash and Friends podcast, or the Akash Mehta and Friends podcast. It's called AMF. I don't care, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a good old friend. I said I would be getting good old friends and people I've been working with all this time on at the end of the podcast run, and that's exactly what we're doing. Last few episodes to go, and today is a person who actually got me into podcasting and who actually got me on my first ever podcast that I ever did, and then co-hosted with me for the second podcast that I ever did, and and we're just waiting to figure out what next podcast to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and privilege and funsy feelings to call on my good best friend, I would say in comedy, Naveen Norona. Hey, man.
Yeah. What's up?
हाँ से कौन
I'm your
है?
best friend in comedy. I like that. Like a lot of people introduce me as their best friend in comedy.
Yeah.
Because in real life I'm very detached. Like only when it comes to comedy, I'm like, yeah, let's talk.
I think, like I say, best friend in comedy, but like we didn't bond over comedy that much. We bonded over best friend things only, like depression and all.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
we met in 2013,
14.
14 when you started comedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your comedy career is as old as the current government.
And the jokes too. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I didn't notice you had nail
Sometimes.
polish. That looks so nice. Is it on both hands or is it
Yeah.
only on the one hand?
No, only one hand.
What is the
Because,
story? Why only on one hand?
I don't know. I'm very bad at painting with the left hand. That's why.
So
There's
that's
no
why
other
you have a
reason.
boyfriend at home, no?
He's very bad at painting in general. Like he started with the thumb and he painted out of the line. So I was very like angry because I'm a nice artist.
Right.
Like my favorite thing to do is like paint between lines. It gives me like nice pleasure
Right.
to do that. So nail polish is the same concept, but only you paint your nails. So like
Right.
that's why.
I personally really like the color of my nails. I know you can't see it because of the light, but like I really love the color of my nails. I think like
It's born pink.
yeah. I'm sure there's a lipstick, a nail polish shade which looks exactly like my nails, and people pay,
Yeah,
$1,200.
there is like the nude color. People prefer that like the nude illusion, but without any of the blemishes of an actual nail.
Right. My nail
So,
has
yeah.
no blemishes. Okay, maybe. I don't know. Do you remember how we met?
Yeah, it was. So basically, I'll tell you how we first did not meet, and I knew who you were before I met you.
Okay.
Because I had come to the Hive open mic where like the whole Jing Bang was there. Literally everybody like now who's active in the scene
Yeah.
was there that night.
Yeah.
And we were all like, I was obviously the outsider the first time, so I was like just observing all of it. Kamara was hosting, Nimesh Advani was there, Akshay Shinde, Deep, you, Kanis, Aditi, who else? Like a lot of Kamal Trilok Singh I think was
Oh,
there.
man, yeah.
So like the whole the gamut of comedy scene, and I was an outsider obviously.
Yeah.
You went up first because you were writing for AIB back then.
Okay.
And up top you went and killed. So all the season acts, so to say, even Utsav Chakraborty was there. So all the good acts went up first because most of you are working with AIB. So you're like did your mics and fucked off to go to work with AIB.
Okay.
While all of us newcomers were left at the back. So the second half was pretty sad in general, not funny.
Yeah.
Until I went up at the very end, like my spot, because Kamra forgot to call my name, and then like I had to remind him that hey, I exist, and then like he was like okay, whatever, come.
Huh.
And then I went, and my first 2-3 minutes were pretty well, like because that was the first time there was this gay person in the comedy scene who was talking about it.
Right.
Not the first time in general, but like someone who was in the Bombay scene, like breaking through as if almost.
And you were like the first.
And,
your first time on stage, you were talking about being gay as well. Like that was your
Yeah.
and that was also your first time on stage talking about being gay, and that was your first time doing comedy as well.
Yeah, first open mic ever.
Yeah.
Just in general.
What a balls.
I don't know what behooved me to like do that,
Yeah.
but like, so I remember like I wanted to like talk to you after the show because I was like, hey, good set, You had done that joke about your father throwing you in the water and waiting for you to like come up.
Oh,
And
man.
you were like, she bach gaya.
That's
that
crazy
set was-
that you remember that joke, because I had completely lost that joke in my brain somewhere. I'm just like, I'm sorry to do this, but I'm gonna write that down. But yeah.
you were like फिर से बच गया, and then I really enjoyed that joke because like okay, that's the level of like my dad and my equation also very similar, so
Yeah.
it hit close to the house. And then like you bounce obviously, and then that very week Monday people told me that Thursday is an open mic happening in this shady room called Studio 62
Yeah.
in Goregaon.
जो कमरा ही
And,
drugs है.
Yeah, basically, so what happened over there was I was working a 2 to 11 p.m. shift, okay,
Okay.
at my workplace. So I had to ask for special permission every time I wanted to do an open mic to work early in the day.
Yeah.
So, and also figure out what PC is free in the office so I can use it.
Yeah.
You know? And then that evening I came and I did that open mic with you guys, and I had no spot, but you said if there's someone cancelling, I'll put you on.
Yeah.
That's how we actually met.
Ah.
And you gave me your Akash Mehta card, which is like comedian, musician, entertainer types.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, Naveen Narona party MC.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I
cocktail wala
remember.
card hai. A stupid ass card.
I still think I have it somewhere, man. That was not a stupid card. That was a nice card.
Yeah, I don't have it anymore. It's crazy. It's like a past that I've totally cut away from, like that link altogether.
Yeah.
So I had like signed up with this Christian, like a magazine which has like all these. It's like a memoir of all the performers or whatever in the Catholic community, like MCs and wedding dress designers or whatever the fuck, cake designers. And my thing is still in there apparently. So like I still get calls around every December. They're like, "Are you a party compere?" I'm like, "No, I don't. I'm a comic now." And they're like, "Oh, what does that mean?" So then like they get into intricacies of what I'm doing now as if like they care. But, yeah.
How much does a party MC get paid?
Oh, very nice actually.
Yeah.
Like in the November December season when like the whole wedding season starts.
Yeah.
Like I have an uncle called Everest Mascarenas. He's retired now from the whole business, but he was like an evangelical preacher also. So like he had like quite a big vault in the scene. So like his starting rate was like 12K for a rose, which is a day before the wedding, and then on the wedding day it would be 25K and above.
Right.
And like
right.
and for a professional MC it was quite big. Like my days also when I was 17, 18, I was earning 5K a weekend.
Right.
Just by like doing this.
Right.
And then the maximum I got was 19,000 once.
Right. Well, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad at
Not
all.
all.
And this was a time when I remember you working like that extra job, and then I think what really made us bond the most was just those random 3 a.m. conversations on WhatsApp where we were both like, "मैं भी depressed, तू भी depressed, कितना depressed."
Yeah.
Is it weird to you that like in the sense ki like you've closed that door to go back to party emceeing, but like if you could, like if that door were to open again in some sense, like would you go back and like censor, like because like you have to be super censored as a party MC, right?
Yeah.
So like,
which I can't actually, like I think even towards the end of my MC days I started doing comedy and that thing overlapped.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were times when at a baptism party where a child is getting baptized and the party's happening and everybody's like doing this and all, I have said fuck on mic literally loudly, like, and there's been like death stares from all the uncles and aunties.
Yeah.
So like while comedy is that liberating where you can say what you want and like say the way you want to say it, Christianity and that whole mold of like close-mindedness kind of truncates you in almost all respects, because like I remember the first comparing gig I had for a wedding, I was so like nervous about it that I did like I watched my uncle's VCD actually, like from my sister's wedding and a couple of other family weddings. I got all the CDs, and my uncle had like this whole like a system that he had. Okay, like so and so things have to be said. Like for example, there's a wedding march that happens when Christians are supposed to like bring their partners along, and supposed to like do this whole march around the hall, and then they call like they make this whole arch with their hands, and the couple goes through it like a tunnel. It's a whole beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so he had this whole like monologue for it, like like for example, the other day I met Auntie Lucy, and Auntie Lucy was wearing the wedding ring on the wrong finger, and I said, "Auntie Lucy, why are you doing this?" And she's like, "What to tell you, Everest? I married the wrong man." And everybody like, ha ha ha. So then it's like, doesn't matter if you're with the wrong man or the right man, bring them on the floor. So I would literally like, take what he was saying and copy that, because I was so nervous to create any of my own lines.
Yeah.
Obviously 2 years, 3 years down the line, I was improvising and I was creating my own shit. But like, this is the level of like humor they would love, okay? And that's the level you have to cater to. Like for example, again, one more thing he would have is like whenever there was a Toastmaster, when the champagne is popped, like he would be like, "Sir, my wife today," he would say this. I didn't have a wife, so I would say my mom. But it was so weird because my and I'll tell you why it's weird, because he would say, my wife had slipped a note into my jacket, and I read later which said KISS. And my friend looked at it and he was like, Everest, your wife is saying kiss. And he's like, no, what she means is keep it short and simple. And that's when the crowd loses their shit. So like that's what was supposed to be done. Okay, that's the level of maturity that they have, and that's what you tackle with. But beyond that, I tell the story now in my new set where like I talk about my MC days, where we used to organize this one game for like couples. Okay,
I like
again,
that
for
the sound
husbands
of
and wives.
my MC days. It sounds
Yeah,
like a rapper's
I'm
name
lucky.
only. Yeah, this is MC
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, this MC Day is coming at you with the God spirit. Hit you with the holy. Anyways, so there was this one game we used to play where like the husbands and wives were supposed to like come together and play this game, and the wife would sit on the chair, and they had to put straws. The husbands had to put straws in their hairs as much as possible in a 60-second, like a minute to minute kind of game.
In the wife's
and
hair.
everybody got a in the wife's hair
Right.
because they would all have like party hair or whatever. So obviously if they have short hair then they're fucked already. So it's like people laugh, they have a great time.
Yeah.
And I was like very pro at organizing this game because I would do a gender swap thing where I'm like, wives, you will just like stand by while your husbands do all the work, okay? So they'll bring all the chairs and they're like, wow, husbands are bringing chairs for us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now arrange the chairs in a circle, and they're like, wow, they're so hardworking. And I'm like, now put your wives on the chairs like the princesses, the queens that they are. And they're like, wow, we're really honored. And then this one time, instead of like just starting the game, I said, okay, now that they're on the chair,
One second,
now set
one
them on
second.
fire. Fuck.
Sorry, my mom felt it necessary to interrupt our little podcast.
Okay. The punchline is ruined now.
I'm
It's
so
okay.
sorry. So yeah, no, I'm in it. I'm still in it. We'll edit it out in a way where it doesn't feel like it's
Okay.
Huh.
So then they would bring the chairs and they would also sit in a circle. And I'm like, now wives are on the chairs. Amazing. Now husbands, set the chair on fire. Like that's how. So, and again, the dead silence, okay? They're not okay with any kind of like dark humor or whatever. So I was just like, this is not for me. That was one of the last few times I hosted.
Right.
And then I did some family functions and then I was like totally out of that scene altogether.
But is it like what's the average day? Like how much you're there for 3 hours, 4 hours? Like that's how much you're.
Yeah, like for example, if a party starts at 8, you have to reach there by 6:30. So you like.
Oh, that's quite early.
My job was to like mainly coordinate everything. Like everything has to go in a certain fashion.
Right.
So an MC is not just keeping the crowd in check, but also like the caterers, the DJ, the light guys, the cleaning boys. Everything has to be streamlined. It's not easy actually. I'll tell you. Like I learned this very early at a very early age.
Yeah.
But even at the age of 17, I could walk into a hall and control the entire room, which is like filled with older men who have done this for longer. But I still had to have that level of confidence that I am running this shit and I know what to do. So you shut the fuck up. Like big men. Like, and then they had respect for me, like in the church and everything. That immediately brings you a lot of respect. My mom was really proud of me because they were like, "Oh, our son is an MC." Like it's a big deal.
Yeah.
You don't realize how big that deal was. So that's why like my departure from that is equally shocking to the entire community because not only my parents but the entire church and the Mirabai in the circuit who knew me,
Right.
they were all like, why would you do this? Why would you take something that you already are good at and then run away from it in a direction which is where you're coming out, you're denouncing religion and all of that. So it
Right.
became a public affair almost, right?
Yeah.
So it was like my life was very gossiped about for the longest time,
Yeah.
And people told me that years later, in fact, people would come to my comedy shows 4-5 years down the line.
Right.
My close friends from work, from my college, from my church and everyone, they told me later on that how much people have spoken about me behind my back.
Right.
Because they found some kind of validation in discussing how this person who was the perfect image of whatever they had in their mind
Right.
digress from that,
What's that like though? Like, I mean, I Catholic communities in Mumbai are very tight knit. I don't know about the rest of the country. My first interaction with them was through our common friend Rafael when I went to law school, and I realized ki, oh man, like the church is such a centerpiece to your social life. It's not just a place where you go on Sunday. It's where you go through the week, and it's where you meet your friends and you do all these competitions and creative activities where they're all and there's so much more. I don't know the English. I forgot the English word. Protsahan hai, like you know what I mean? Ki like
enthusiasm,
and encouragement. Like there's encouragement towards
Yes.
artistic things. There's encouragement towards.
Oh, for sure.
Of course, within the purview of the censorship that a church would have, but like there's still so much.
Yeah. My very public speaking skills come from the church, in fact. Like if I had
Right.
not went up on stage, like we used to have these Parents' Day functions,
Yeah.
then we had the annual day functions for the church, and then we had this church competing against the other churches.
Yeah, zonals, right?
From the zonals. So like Bandra has the zonals because Bandra has 4 main churches. In our area we have Mira Bhayandar, which is like the Mira Road and Bhayandar churches. So 2 churches in Mira Road and 2 in Bhayandar.
Right.
And then there's like Uttan and whatever, but no one they're Marathi.
Right.
But we had this English speaking 4 churches, and so we would compete. All the youth group would come together. We would have all these rally games or whatever. Like there were all these activities, plays. And so in every church, like there was one person who was always like the leader, so to say, and I was that person. I very unabashedly took that role up because I wanted to be that person because there was no outlet for me growing up. There was nothing where I was like creatively endowed.
Right.
But I was not able to like do it, because again I'll tell you the dichotomy of Bhayandar is that there's Bhayandar East and Bhayandar West. Okay, now Bhayandar West has more East Indians. It was like a very old fisherman settlement which was converted way back, so they're very like, we are Portuguese descent or we are Dutch descent, and they're very proud of it, and they speak Marathi and everything. So when a Bhayandar East Catholic person who's a Goan or a Mangalorean or a Mallu moves to Bhayandar West, they're a little outcasted.
Okay.
So that's the I kind of like find it very hilarious now. Now I look back at it, like we talk about like how even Muslims mein Shia Sunni happens. Even in Christians, there's East Indians, Mangaloreans, Goans, and Malayalis, and then Andhras and all. So like there's that bifurcation also. So while in Bhayandar East we were a very close knit family and everybody was like really tight, irrespective of your language you spoke. Bhayandar West was not so good. Like, we remember this one time a priest was actually beaten up in the middle of a church procession.
What?
Because, there's an actual story again. This happened during the Holy Week, where Good Friday and Easter happens. Maundy Thursday, Last Supper, Good Friday, and then the Easter Sunday, right? So before the Good Friday Mass, the choir had some Konkani singers who sang Konkani song, whereas they usually sang a Marathi song because East Indians, right? But because they sang a Konkani song, the people attacked the choir first in the middle of the mass, in the middle of a prayer thing that's happening. And it's a big deal, okay? It's like a very holy day for Christians.
Yeah.
So they did not care for the whole ritual or whatever, and they went for the choir, and then the choir was like, hey, we got permission from the priest. So they like attacked the priest also. So the priest had to run away from the mass altogether and hide in his room and stay hidden till the East Indians were calmed down.
Yeah.
So it was kind of baffling, and that's when like one of the last few years I was in the church, zeitgeist, so to say, and I was like, this is fucked up, man. Like if you are saying that you are proud Christians or whatever, and in the middle of something that's precious to you, you do this.
Yeah.
It's not sensible. I didn't find any sense in that, and I was very angry. So that would happen also, like between the churches. And so that's what we call a deanery, Bhayandar deanery, and I was a youth leader in that area.
Right.
Representing all the churches ka youth, and then we had to represent the archdiocese, which is Bandra. So like the whole Mumbai is under whatever.
Yeah.
So best part was because of that role that I had, that outlet first was in my church, and then when I became the president of the deanery, I could travel to Bandra and perform my activities over there. So now I was like meeting with kids from different walks of life altogether. Some of them who were like, people of sons of prostitutes or whatever, who had then converted and now were like participating in the church to some extent. So it was like fun. Like I think a lot of it came from my early days in the church, but the duality or the dichotomy of it, I couldn't understand.
Right. So I think what that kind of also tells me is how much more pressure it would be to leave an institution like that, because it's so intrinsically part of your life, right? And I think when we met is sort of when you were going through all of these motions as well, right? There was I think you were I call it a crisis of faith of sorts. Would you categorize it as that?
No, the faith was gone a long time back. Like I told, like all these little like there were microaggressions in the church which I would like diagnose as like problematic. Like one priest ka ouster was like a whole big fight. There was donation ka corruption in my church where like a few men like basically took the money from the church and were like not giving it back because there was a new church building being constructed and they were like doing apply in there. Right. And I was like looking at all of this and I'm like, my faith does not like quantify all of this to begin with. And then like the more I read, once comedy started, obviously like we were pushing the whole left wing chain of thought altogether, right? Because you're watching all these comics talking about feminism, about sexual liberation, about gay rights, which I was talking about. Yeah. But again, because it came from a place of like, hey, I'm just discovering who I am right now, but here's my build, But the deeper I dug into it, the more I understood the pedophilia and all that. So like the faith was like gone a long time back. Even in college, I would say I was agnostic towards my final year. And then I moved away from it. But like I would still do the appearances. Like I would still show up every Sunday, talk to people. And it's a whole deal, like in Christians, like when you go to church, you don't just go to church. You go to like an entire event, like you have your friends and we'd all walk together home, pick a spot for breakfast, go to our favorite South Indian joint after Mass. And these are lovely parts about it also.
Yeah.
But the way I went about it, I just like stopped going to church one day. Like cold turkey, just like didn't wake up one day. And I woke up, but I didn't feel like going.
When you say cold turkey, then I have to ask, were there withdrawal symptoms after? Like, did you feel like this empty hole in your life when you suddenly... No?
I'll tell you why. Because thanks to comedy, I also discovered a certain substance. and Sunday mornings were the only times I had my house free. So if my folks left for mass, I had an hour to do whatever I wanted, to air out the room after I'd done my thing.
So you could smoke cigarettes.
Yes, cigarettes, yeah, which were a peculiar color. So yeah, so that's definitely that was even like when I stopped going to church slowly, like I would tell my mom and dad to go ahead, because then we'd catch one rickshaw and go together. But I'd be like, y'all go ahead. I would give them rickshaw money. I'm like, you take rickshaw money and you go ahead. I'll come after some time. So I would wait for them to leave so I couldn't go for a bath. I would pretend to go for a bath and smoke a joint. Shit, I just said it.
It's okay. It's okay. It's gone.
And I smoke that was in 2014. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not in my bloodstream anymore.
Yeah.
NCB. So then like, then I would reach mass also, like 9:15 the mass would start. I would reach at 9:45.
Right.
Just like strolling high as fuck, because early days of getting high, so obviously you're baked. Okay, just like you're seemingly high. And my friend Terence, who's known me and whose car we used to roam around before, and he's like, "To kitna bhante ho? Like, just stop coming to church altogether." I'm like, "That's a great idea," because if I don't come, I can stay at home and I can watch whatever I want and I can be myself. So that's how it initially started.
Yeah.
And also one more option available to us was to go in the evening. So if you don't feel like going in the morning, there's an evening 6 p.m. mass for the sinners. Okay, my mom would say that this is a mass for the sinners who are not willing to wake up and sacrifice their morning for the God. This is for you. Okay, and I'm like, I'm a hardworking motherfucker who wakes up every day at 7 and catches a train at 8:25 to go to Bandra car side and do my thing, and then do an open mic and then come back at 1 and repeat this every day. You think I'm not hardworking? You think God wants my sacrifice? Fucking. And then like intense arguments would happen in the beginning of that, but like I enjoyed that. I would like take my time. There was no withdrawal from the church at all. So
Was there? You also mentioned that like you would give the rickshaw money, right? Like, and this is a theme that I've noticed with your life throughout. Like, are your parents very old? Like, is there a lot of gap as compared to the average parent-child relationship?
Like I was born much later in the relationship, in their marriage rather, relationship. So I'm like 11 and 9 years younger to my older sisters. So
Right,
like
that's huge.
they're both married and have 2 kids each. While I'm still like, while they were both married, I was still in school.
Right.
So that was kind of
So
weird.
parents are now
And
what, late 60s, late 60s.
Father's mid 60s, mom is just turned 60 now.
Right. Right.
So yeah, they are like very shriveled and old looking in general. I look at them as like prunes, like I remember them as like a version of themselves that was like, we can do anything. My mom used to run a babysitting business, a tuition business, and a pickle business parallelly.
Right.
But my father was in Israel to like support our upbringing.
Yeah.
And my father came back jobless, so like he was angry for like a few years, and then he got a job, and then he retired because everybody at the job hated him apparently.
Oh no.
Which I find sense into. But like so
You
they didn't
mentioned-
didn't plan so much for the future. I would say they were first level migrants. They had moved into the city and they were just like trying to make ends meet. And it took them years to have their own apartment. In fact, from like living on rent in Chawls and whatever. So that upgrade in life for us was a big high marker in our life already.
Right.
So the next upgrade was going to be me as their son, taking them to a next notch.
Right. Is it?
And then.
And that's interesting to me, right? Because like a lot of people will categorize when the conversation about you comes up, it's about like, oh man, yeah, Naveen is that comic who's gay and he talks about being gay. But what they don't realize is that it's not just that, it's the cross section of society in terms of sexuality is there, and then the cross section of society in terms of economic background is there. How many comics today who grew up in the Santa Cruz Kachol, right? And I think that is what makes your point of view the most unique, because even when you talk to people who are very vocal about homosexuality in India, I mean pro homos, not the ones who are haters.
Either
but
ways,
like
I talk to everybody.
Yeah, no, but like whenever I have encountered people who are very vocal, they happen to be from a certain economic background that gives them the security to be able to say these things out loud. अभी का पैर आ रहा है पीछे. So
Thank God it's only the leg though.
So it's interesting to me that that perspective is really the one that I'm not more interested in it, but I feel like that is just as important as the gay. It's not just the gay guy talking. It's the gay guy who you should be listening to, because this is the guy who came up from the street. This guy does not have a economic fucking fallback. The guy does not have daddy to take care of things.
Never.
In any sense.
Even now, like on my YouTube, like there's so many kids who comment, like kids starting from the age of 15 to like 20, bi, trans, gay, lesbian, and they have no one to go to, because like a lot of times like we don't have queer counselors so much in India.
Yeah.
And if there are, they are charging so much that they can't afford to. So like
Yeah.
for a kid from like Jamnabai to like who's feeling queer can go to a counselor. But somebody from my strata of society, from beyond,
Yeah.
let's say Goregaon, in fact,
Yeah.
we do struggle with our own issues before we even come to terms with our orientation. For
Right.
me, like my whole thing was, okay, if I come out today, they'll throw me out of the house, and then what do I do?
Right.
And like it was a duality again, because I was like, I'm the only one supposed to take care of them. I remember this one time very clearly, and I won't lie to you, because I was working at this job, that job I told you, the 2 to 11 job I was working. I had fought with my family to get that job also, because I had left L&T, which was an engineering job, to go and work as a content writer at a lower end of the tier system, starting from the bottom, really. Literally,
Right.
And when comedy happened, I first applied to like tell them that, hey, I'm not interested in working here, I want to leave. And this very manipulative kind of a manager I had called Mahesh Desai, and I can call him a cunt because I have wiped his vomit off my legs. Okay, so I don't care.
Okay.
Okay, that's a different story altogether. But he called me into the cabin, and he's trying to like make me convinced that, okay, you don't want to leave, you don't have to leave, because he's like, who's earning at your house? And I'm like, nobody, my sisters are married. So he dug deeper, okay, like he was trying to like get into me, and I was a young kid who was still like trying to figure out my scene.
Right.
I broke down in his office, okay. I'm not kidding. I'm like a 22-year-old employee at a content writing firm, breaking down still. I don't want to disappoint my family. I'm just doing all of this to make my mom proud, because she has expectations from me. So that whole phase was very weird, because I didn't want to let them down. So I always tell kids, even now, no matter what your background is, secure your fucking self first. Make enough money, have a savings account, then some, invest in some, and then like tell them.
Yeah.
Because then you have something to fall back on. My
Yeah.
eventuality, even if my coming out was an entire 2-year process. It was not overnight also,
Right.
So that's the whole story I've told in my set also, and
course,
in my
yeah.
new special also. Like, I dig deeper into where I come from, my origins, also because Nanak, as we know,
Yeah.
he was the one who saw me first doing my first solo, The Good
Yeah.
Child, and he's like, good, this is good. You're talking about stuff that really matters to you. You're talking about where you come from, your emotions and everything. But
Yeah.
who are you? Who are
Yeah.
you really? What? How does this joke make Naveen Narona? And after that, there was like almost a renaissance of sort, where I was like, I have to dig deeper. So that's when I really went back and started talking about like my insecurities as a kid. Bhayandar happened because of that. Like, I would never talk about Bhayandar, because when I first entered the green room of a Hive or a Canvas Laugh Club,
Yeah.
everybody in that room was from South Bombay, including you. Everybody was from South Bombay, Andheri, Bandra, all high-end places,
Yeah.
living in 2
Yeah.
BHKs with their families,
Yeah.
sorted, married almost. So I didn't feel like I was welcome there almost, because first of all, I am the queer one. So
Yeah.
I'll come with a mental block that I'm not going to be an easy
Yeah.
blend into this whole thing, which I know is not, again, people can be like, hey, we're cool. I know it's not that. I know in the green room that the air changes. I know it. I can sense it. I'm not stupid. I've been queer my entire life. I pick up on these things. Okay.
Right.
Second was the socioeconomic thing. So I would also like, be shut about that. You saw me. The beginning days of Canvas, I would just be in the corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly rolling a joint for everybody,
And you're,
because that's the
you're
way I found.
generally a quiet person also. You're not the kind of
I
person
observe.
who opens up very quickly to new people
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
I notice more and I observe more. That's what life has taught me, and I'm okay with that. So like when I got into that whole scene, I realized that that's the pushback I will get, and that's what I have to circumvent eventually. So it's being aware of that. So Bhayandar happened because of being open of the fact that, hey, I travel every day. And then like I was assuming that the comics will be like, chi tu Bhayandar se hai. And that's how my brain works. Ki like,
Yeah.
chi tu achut hai. I'm like, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Because they were immediately like, oh fuck, you travel every day for an hour, and then you go from Lower Parel to Bhayandar again, you'll change 3 trains.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. And then immediately they had a little bit of more respect for me. I felt
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
So being honest helped me a lot. And now in my new set, I talk about my chawl days. I went even further back in time, and what it was to grow up in Santa Cruz chawls, and how
Yeah.
miserable our life was over there.
Yeah.
And even there, like the dichotomy of like growing up in a chawl environment, but also being a boy to a middle class family. There's certain privileges that even my sisters wouldn't have.
And a
in chawl.
boy that came after a lot of effort, like in terms of your parents
Yeah.
really, really praying for it and doing
Yeah.
the whole Christian version of Mannat Mangna.
Yeah, so they pray
yeah.
to this thing called Novena, which is in Mahim, and Novena se Navina hai. So I
Yeah.
do this whole story in my shed also. So yeah, right now I'm like enjoying the process of doing my sets, because I spent a lot of time on them. Like I think your and my writing ways are very different.
Yeah.
Because you have a thought and you pen it down immediately, you create a structure and you go on stage and you.
I don't
try
write
to-
shit, but like I
You
I
make a structure at least. I've seen you like make flow charts and shit, right?
Yeah.
Which we did in Bangalore, remember?
yeah,
But
only for that
me on
one
the other-
special.
Yeah, you worked really hard on that one. I'll give you that one. You were like really into it. Because you even when we would meet normally, like normally we talk about normal shit, you would talk
Yeah.
about your jokes even then. And I'm like, hey Akash, once in a while, let's just talk about life.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you would create a structure, but like what I would do is I would just like go straight into the set. Like
Right.
I'm as raw as possible when I first do it. I don't write anything, and then I write after that. Like once I've gotten what I want to feel on stage,
Yeah.
I work backwards, and then like I'm like, hey, there's so much more to explore here, you know. Like remember the Ramdev Baba joke, which I used to do back in my first few days of sets. Also,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
because we all found out that Ramdev Baba has a conversion camp
Yeah,
where he's
yeah.
like, I can convert gay people, and that joke never felt a part of any set until the coming out to my mom's set came around, you know. So
And I
hence, like,
remember
it was
watching
always-
that develop also, and I remember just feeling like
Yeah.
like we all felt like like it's just like yes, it's come, like it's now it's where it belongs, like finally.
Jigsaw puzzle feel, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how my writing has always been. So it's always been like, okay, experiential, but like now find the humor in it, working backwards.
Yeah. Is there man, I feel like there's so much more to talk about when it comes to this, right? Like because like in Bhayandar though there is some degree of security. You mentioned your dad worked in Israel.
Yeah.
What did he do there?
I have no idea. So I'll tell you what happened. I'll work again. I like to work backwards always. So one day my mom gets a call. Okay, my mom gets a call, and it's like I even thinking about it now gives me goosebumps because my dad was supposed to travel back from Israel to India.
Yeah.
And this was a very tension-filled time when
This is when Akshay
Palestinian-
Kumar had to come and save everybody. This is that time, no?
yeah. No, that was much earlier. That was the Kuwait Gulf times.
Oh, okay.
That was my mom's situation where she was involved in the airlift-esque situation
Huh.
where Indian company, the Indian government had to intervene and get the citizens out of Kuwait because of the Gulf War. That was early, and after that I was born. But
Yeah.
my dad went after that to Israel when the Palestinian and the Israeli
Israel
war was
conflict,
beginning.
huh.
So they were like, all the Indians or whatever, they were sending back. And my mom gets a call and she takes the receiver and then she drops the receiver. She just drops the receiver, goes against the wall and starts sobbing, okay? I'm 7 or 8 years old.
Right.
I have no idea. Then my sister, the phone is dangling like this. She picks up the receiver. She keeps it on the phone and she's like, hello. She hears something. She does the same thing. My mom went to this wall, she went to the next wall. And I'm like, can somebody tell me? And only my mom and sister are at home. And I'm like a kid who's confused as fuck, okay?
Yeah.
And the phone's still dangling. So I just put the phone back and I cut the tone, okay? And now my mom's crying and saying, your father's arrested. And she's just crying, breaking down, saying that your father's in jail. They got him in Israel. And now they're going to put him in jail. And we all know how Mossad is, right? So they were scared that Mossad only has taken my father. And my father's younger brother, is Vincent Karki, remember who passed away when we were at the farmhouse last
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
He comes home with tandoori chicken, okay? He used to work at a restaurant. And my 8-year-old brain is like, fuck tandoori chicken. So I forget everything. And I'm eating tandoori. And my parents are crying. And my uncle is like, it's okay, he's fine. And then like everybody's crying, saying that my father, and like by now my mom's friends have also come home, like her
Right.
area
At this
friends,
point,
my
how much
godmother.
time have you spent with your dad also, considering that he's been working abroad, right?
3 years, I think. My first 3 years, and then he was gone.
Then he was gone, right? So you barely know this guy.
I don't
in
know my
that
father.
sense.
I just know him from like phone calls because there was only phone calls back then.
Right.
And that to like very expensive ISD phone calls.
Yeah.
So we had to schedule it on a night. And I remember Akele Tum had come out back then. So there was a song called But I Love You Daddy. So my mom would force me to sing that song to my father because he liked that song. And I don't like the song, but I'm like, I love you, daddy. I didn't even call him daddy, I didn't call him papa. It was so fucking weird. But anyways,
You called him
So-
Papa?
yeah, I still call him papa.
Okay.
Yeah, mummy papa. That's how he said.
Interesting. I call my Papa as well. So
Yeah, papa is like transcending. It's like even in Spanish, like papa. You know, it's like it's very, it's a cute thing. I think because most kids, when they start talking, they say Dada or Papa first.
Yeah.
That's a patriarchal thing. Anyways,
No, my nephew though says mama only. He don't give no shits.
he been trained well.
He doesn't even he barely says dada. It's just that the duh sound is easy. That's all it is. It's just that he
Yeah,
just goes
yeah.
da 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 da. And my brother is like dik dada bola. Bola nahi bro. वो बस da
It's
da
basically
da
a jaw opening. That's all the sound how it is. Da da da. Your tongue connecting to your upper. Anyways, so my mom is crying. Ladies have come to our house. It's a
Yeah.
whole scenario.
Yeah.
And I'm eating tandoori chicken. I don't fucking care. And then like later on we found out when everybody is just in, after a few minutes one more phone call comes and I'm still focusing on my chicken. I don't know what the call is about this time.
Yeah.
And now everybody's laughing. Everybody's fine. I'm like,
Okay.
what the fuck happened? Was my father arrested? Like, I'm concerned, but let me focus on my chicken. But I'm also concerned, okay? And they're like, no, he's not arrested, he's detained. So he was just like held back at the airport for a little longer because his flight was delayed. That information my father gave to my uncle, who used to also work in Israel.
Right.
He called his wife, my aunt, who was in Mumbai, and detained, became arrested with a phone call, and that phone call came to my mom like that.
Chinese
So your
whispers.
auntie जो है ना एकदम एकदम की लौड़ी है वैसे भी. I still like. Even right now, she's involved too much in my life. She like, she calls my mom and she'll be like, ask Naveen not to be gay. And I'm like, तेरे को क्या जा रहा है लौड़ी? Just fucking mind your own business now, fucking cunt. I hate this woman, dude. Like, by the way, the same uncle who was who called her first is now accused of a minor rape case. Okay, so like not a minor rape case, he raped a minor kind of case. You know, so his court case is still on. So I don't know what judgment they are bestowing upon me when their fucking own daman is, dirty.
Yeah.
Anyways, so my family is like that only. But yeah, so my father when he finally came, I had not seen my father in physical form. It was quite a letdown, man. It was just like all the hype was not worth it. It was just
Right.
like a very hollowed out, angry man who's now become much fine. Like he's much better now. Because even Abhishek, like he'll meet my father and he'll be like, I don't know what you're complaining about. Like you base so many of your insecurities on your father and how he brought you up, but like he seems fine. I'm like, now he's fine. After like all of us left home and he had nothing to do but talk to my mother, like that's when he finally became a better person.
Right.
Otherwise, he was very like always angry. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like you know how having a father, you can't ask
Yeah.
him how his day went or whatever. You can't have a normal playtime around him because he comes home, takes his clothes off, wears his lungi, and just starts hitting whiskey. You know, like then
Yeah.
where do you find like the
That's
comfort
that's a great point though. Like I agree with you. Like sometimes the anger towards our parents, our friends will always be like, what are you so angry about? And I'm like, you weren't fucking there. You weren't there
Yeah,
for
you
all
weren't
of
there.
it. And
Yeah.
I agree. This guy you met, he's a great guy. I love this guy too. But this is not the guy always when you're not around.
Yeah. अभी
Yeah.
ये विकसित हो चुका है. Like this is a updated version of my father.
And
This
it's also
version
like a
5.0.
outside face and an inside face. Like even me, dude. Like I'm so much more irritable. We are all so much
Yeah.
more irritable with our loved ones than we are with the people outside. It's so weird to me that we have infinite patience sometimes for strangers and fans that we meet somewhere, but we don't have the same kind of patience for our parents. And that's I think because that history is just so much,
Yeah.
and so many things
I
never
know-
get resolved.
The worst part is I grew up to be my own father. I grew up to become just like him. That's the worst part.
तू भी लुंगी
Because-
पहन के विस्की पीता है?
हाँ तो क्या मैं तो लुंगी उतार के फेंक पीता हूँ. I sit on the balcony so entire society can see. No, actually, my father has peculiar habit. Like if he's mad at something, he just shuts down. Like it could be the most trivial thing. Like somebody crossed him on the road wrongly, and somebody gave him a nudge which he didn't like, and then the entire family had to suffer for like 3 days until his anger went down. His favorite team lost, whatever. Just like the most trivial thing. And I'm like, I'll never be like him until I started living with my own partner, and over 2 years, like if he upsets me, I also shut down. I just like immediately I don't. His existence doesn't matter to me. In that frame of time, I disregard him entirely. He could die, I could not blink. That's how I am as a person. And I'm like, what? How the fuck did I become this person, dude? And so now I actively try to like talk as much as possible. Like if there's issues, we clear it out. In fact, like something very interesting happened when I went back home after the lockdown. Like 4 months, I had not seen my family because I'd gone there after Australia. I gave them the Australia chocolates and goodies and all of that, and then it was effectively shut down. Right, so even from Mumbai Khar to Bhayandar, I couldn't travel.
Yeah.
So when I did go back, I went there for 10 days which was a big mistake because I was also in the process of leaving a job in that point of time. So again, that whole my mom and dad discussing of how he got a job, and again his jobless can't hold a job together. So, and all these things, like it's a build up of all these things. So I end up breaking down in front of them. You know, I shouldn't be, but then like spending the entire lockdown alone and having lived my entire few years like in isolation, almost like being a loner, all these things like kind of came to the fore. And like for the first time in many years, because I broke down, my mom broke down, my father broke down, we all just like had a first time ever, we had a
Cry
full on
together.
like
Yeah.
honest conversation. Like, you know, we cried and everything about like everything, you know, like all the things that were said in the past where I've said, I asked, if I told my mom like in anger, "Kya, I wish you died," she brought it back up.
Yeah.
I told her what you said, you called me abnormal when I told you I'm gay, I brought it up. So
Yeah.
like, you know, all these things that we were like feeling back then and we didn't like put a picture to it, we didn't set the record straight, we finally got that chance, you know. So everything came out in the fore, including my father's inability to talk to his kids. My mom sat him down and told him if you ever listen to him, then he would tell you because he tells me everything. Why would you listen? And then like everything became very clear for a second, you know. So now after that, every time I've gone back, there's a level of honesty and there's a level of clarity now, which I enjoy.
Is that it's I'm amazed at that, dude. I don't think my family is capable of that. I don't think we've had the kind of I don't think we've had the kind of turbulence also in that sense. But like yeah, man. Like it's for me. It's at home. It's like it's empathy for them, and then there's frustration towards them, and then there's empathy, and then there's frustration, and then there's empathy, and there's frustration, and I think both of us also really related on the fact that we are the youngest in the household.
Yeah.
And it comes with like just the weirdest of expectations, right? Like and it's just it's so hard to be taken seriously as an adult as you progress through your 20s and you start sorting shit out. You know, it's like just today morning, man, like my mom will listen to some random person in the building over me about stuff that is happening in my house. You know, like that's stuff that I'm looking at like with my eyes and I'm informing them. So it's like it's I don't know, like I think we can't blame them, but then at some point, some days I feel like, man, we need to hold each other to a higher standard also sometimes to try and change each other. But then I feel like, यार
Yeah.
60 साल के आदमी को तुम क्या बोलोगे बदलने के लिए? You know?
Yeah. Like even like with religion, my mom and I have always like butted heads. Like even now, she's okay with the fact that I'm living with a guy. It's okay that I have anal sex. It's okay that I'm out in public. She still has a problem with me condemning religion. Like, you know, but the last time I went home, she said that okay, because this whole bishop in Kerala verdict had come out where he had raped nuns, and instead of punishing the bishop, they punished the nuns, like in typical Indian fashion. And my mom, as a woman, she for the first time felt the pain of that woman. She was like, how could they do this? If there's 5 women saying that, hey, here's a man, could be a bishop, could be a priest, could be a man of God, but he did something wrong. So that's not justified, you know, you can't do this. So for the first time, her belief in that whole hierarchy was broken, and I like that. Like, you know, let her discover it on her own pace. At least I am a catalyst, you know. If I had not opened up about this, then even now, if that had happened, she would have turned a blind eye, saying that okay, the nuns were that mistake. But because I have actively taught her to question everything now, I think that kind of plays in, you know. Because they are very set in their ways. It's not easy. We're not going to change our perceptions overnight because they have lived a life too. We discount that fact that okay, yeah, we have discovered the internet, so we know more, which is great. But then, how do you know how to fry a fish? No, you don't. We have no idea. How do you know how to go to a market and haggle?
Yeah, there's knowledge to just having been around. Like if you've just been around for longer than someone else, you just generally, I think, know more shit. You know, like when this pandemic happened, like, and I was just sitting and one day randomly talking to my granddad. And he was like, man, this is like the 3rd pandemic I've seen. And I was like, and I was like, yeah, because he was alive like during World War II. He was born in 19...
The Kolkata famine.
Like, so he's pretty freaking old, dude. He's in his 90s, man. So like, he's
yeah.
seen shit that is... And he's seen it at a point where they were even more helpless to do anything about it than we think we are now.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and they didn't even have therapists. They didn't even have concept of mental health. They just went like, okay, let's just like fuck it. Like, let's just keep going. You know. This is especially our grandparents' generation. Like, they saw a partition of a country and the violence that ensued after. You know, and they just like all went like, okay, we're just gonna keep going because we're too poor to fucking have an opinion about this right now.
Yeah, like my grandpa, like my grandparents, both of my mom and dad and my their sides, both of them had passed away before I was born. So my dad's uncle is my grandfather. My dad's father, my mama essentially. So he would tell us stories about like how when they were kids there were still Portuguese sailors around. Like there was like the port was active, the Mangalore port was like very actively used by Portuguese people, right? So like it was like they had seen like so many governments come and change. So like now Modi comes, Sonia Gandhi comes, they give no fucking shit because they have seen like they have 5 different forms of documentation from their childhood because of the changes, right?
Right.
So like Portuguese, British, Indian, whatever, then like something else.
Right.
So they don't they're so jaded by that time. Like I remember when we had first gone, like I was 5, and my grandmom never wore a blouse. Like they were so interiors of Mangalore that they were just like, they just wore a sari with a pallu on, and the pallu was supposed to cover them, not the blouse. So they were just like walking in the fields like blouseless, and I'm like, that's what the fuck, And then like we remember we had gotten a TV, okay? Like some cousin from Mumbai had gotten a TV to Mangalore, and we had turned it on, and DD was playing, and back then DD would take a break, like they would play the news.
एक सेकंड क्या यार वो बीएमसी वाला है सैनिटाइज करने को घर. एक सेकंड पॉज करना पड़ेगा. कर लो. Hey,
Fuck.
we are gonna, you know what, guys? We're just gonna take a break at this point.
This episode of the AMF podcast is brought to you by Fantasy Leagues. Casteism is rampant and innocent Muslims are being framed. पर आप ये सब रहने दो. आप जाके टीम बनाओ.
Hello. We are back. Actually, we didn't go anywhere, but that is the magic of film and television that can make you wonder कि ये लोग the pink पर्दा came and it went.
Yeah, we were behind the parda only.
Yeah. You have actively been involved in pig farming. And I mean, to whatever village excursions you had to Bangalore, where your family still has a pig farm.
Yeah.
Man, here's what I want to know. Are they really as smart as people say they are?
They are fucking intelligent.
Yeah.
Like pigs are generally like very understanding creatures.
Yeah.
They understand what humans are saying. They care for each other and for the animals also.
Right.
And the fact that like how I had fucked up by going and not knowing this because I was like 13, I remember, and 13 or 15, I think, and I'd gone to stay at my uncle's place, and my uncle had like an entire pig farm. Beautiful place because they have like different sheds for different animals also. So they have chicken farm and everything, and they take everything is like sustainable in their entire house. Like even the food that comes for the pigs, basically they have a tie-up with a restaurant where they take an entire like 20-liter drum with them. And my uncle also has a rickshaw. He used to drive a rickshaw, but now he doesn't. Now it's for private transportation. So he would drive the rickshaw, and I went with them to see how it's done. So he and his son would go to the back of the restaurant, and all the leftover food that they've collected that day from the plates or whatever, and from the kitchen, they would just like dump all of it, and like a very disgusting smelling mix of all kind of sambar and chutney and whatever of all day, and then they would just like use that to feed the pigs because they literally like. And but they loved it, dude. They would fucking go crazy for it.
Yeah.
So my uncle had like pointed out like which one is going to be like culled in the coming days because it's reached the 80 kilo plus mark where they go to the market. So one day beforehand, I went like, hey, wow, nice. And I went to the pig that was going to get killed, and I'm like, oh, you're getting killed tomorrow in Konkani.
Right.
And my uncle just like, without thinking, took the pail that he was emptying the food in and hit me in the face with it. And he's like, are you fucking stupid? Like, so all the fucking... I remember there was a bengan in that which was squished, and the bengan ka remnants were in my face. And he's like, are you stupid? I told you not to say this around him. Tomorrow is going to be a task.
Yeah.
And next morning I woke up to sounds of a pig grunting loudly and running crazy, okay? Because the moment he opened the pen, he knew that he was going to get killed because I had opened my dumb mouth.
Right.
And everybody blamed me for it. And so like then 4 or 5 more farmers from the neighborhood got involved. So it was an entire pig chase. It was beautiful actually because I was just like standing and watching this pig go berserk. And I'm like, where will it run? Like there's a river next time and there's a mountain here. Where will you run, you stupid pig? And then they...
How do you still eat pork after you see something like that?
It's delicious, dude. I think the taste trumps everything. Have you eaten pork? In fact, that very day when they killed the pig, like, first of all, my uncle was like, because you were involved in causing trouble, you will help us now. So then I was asked to come forth all the way, and like his legs were tied with the rassi, but I still had to hold it like because it was so unsteady, and watch from like 15 centimeters away, like its neck being cut.
Right.
With a sharp knife, as like hot oozing blood comes out.
Yeah.
Like, because any creature, when you cut their neck, the blood is boiling hot because of the
Yeah.
temperature inside the body. So it was just like I was watching it flow from, and what they used to like transport the blood to a container is like a mango tree bark. Like they have this not mango, sorry, a coconut tree bark or palm tree bark,
Okay.
which is like very sturdy. So they would just like shove it under the pig's neck, and the blood would flow. And as it was flowing into a container, it was coagulating because of the
Yeah.
heat level, right? And some of it was splattering on my face also. Like it was so close to it because that's the life over there. And when I had first gone to Mangalore, I had strongly thought of like moving there because the city life was done for me. Like when I was very young, my whole life was, Alexander Supertramp, like Christopher McCandless, the guy who ran away into the wild, the whole story.
Yeah.
Very inspired by that. So I was like,
How old are you at
happy
this
with
point?
like 15, 16, yeah.
Okay.
So very idealistic, very adventure
Was
driven.
this a
so to
point
say.
where you were aware of your sexuality? Like, were you exploring it actively at that time? Like,
In fact, it was for the first time in Mangalore. I had like my cousin and I kind of like played a little bit. It's very weird, but like, it happened.
a lot of
And,
kids' initial sexual encounters happen to be with family.
Yeah.
In
And
a
I always
weird
thought it
way. Yeah.
It was embarrassing. Obviously, I didn't want to like say it out loud until years later, because then I started doing a podcast. When Keeping Queer happened, I realized that that's such a common pattern throughout queer boys.
Yeah.
The cousin now has gone to become a priest, so the signs are all there. At least I'm honest about my orientation. So the first time, a little bit of like, handy playing thing happens. It was with my cousin when I was 15, but went to the back burner. It was not until I was 18 or 19 I came to terms with who I am, because I even tried dating girls. Like from the age of 16, 17, I was
Right.
dating girls. I was trying to see if I want to make love to them or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't even say have sex with girls. That's how gay I am. I like make love with girls. That's what.
Hey. And it's so at this point, like, I mean, I'm just thinking, right? Like, if you know you're gay, you're not moving to a village in Mangalore. You know what I mean?
Yes and no. First of all, like in terms of like wanting to get away from people altogether, because that would be like I would start a new chapter altogether. So
Right.
I had strongly spoken to about this to my family as well. My mom was like, my dad does have some land, but it's under dispute right now. And it's a whole it's a clusterfuck. So we dropped that idea altogether. But there was a very strong possibility that if I had chosen to, I could have moved and lived in Mangalore by myself and started my whole life, from scratch. So that was very alluring. But again, I knew that lifestyle over there would be very difficult as compared to the city life. So by the time I had come to understand my orientation, I'd also had sexual encounters, not only with my cousin back in Mangalore, but local trains happened.
Yeah.
I know people say hey Naveen, you mentioned that in a lot of your sets, but it was such a pivotal part of my life, that whole local train experience,
Yeah, I'm
whole
amazed.
sojourn of sorts. Yeah.
Those stories that you have told me have blown my brains out, because I had no
Yeah.
idea this was happening.
Full on. It happens at a very open, obviously people don't know because of the crowd, but it happens. It's very obvious. You have to just play the cards right, know which one of your other members in the train is like you. It's crazy, man. It's fucking crazy.
So
The
for those
stuff
people
I've
who
got-
haven't heard this story, could you just give an idea of what the fuck is going on in the local
Which
trains?
one do you want to hear?
Just how does this cause these people don't know, right? People listening, y'all don't know what he's talking about at all. So just to
Okay, I'll
give
tell
them
you one,
context.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one I know because I was wiser that day. Most of the times I was not wise, so I'll tell you the not wise one as well. First one, so I'm sitting in a train, and back then I used to read papers. I used to buy newspapers at the newspaper stall at the station, and read from Bandra to Bhayandar because I was studying in Mahim. So that was my journey. Okay, so one day I'm reading the newspaper. One man comes. So I'm sitting down. Okay, I'm on the seat, and a man comes and stands in front of me. Okay, so while I'm doing this, I'm holding the newspaper. He's rubbing his crotch against my hand. Okay, so must have happened a mistake in the beginning, but I enjoyed it. I'm like, okay. So I keep my hand hovering there for a little longer.
Right.
So, and then slowly and steadily, this guy's getting very hard, okay? Like, he's full on getting a boner. So now I fold newspaper in like 4 parts so I can keep it against his crotch altogether and shove my hand behind the paper and I'm groping him, okay? I'm full on like fucking touching his penis and unzip him and put my hands inside also, okay? Like, in a crowded evening train, nobody knows, okay? Then when Bhayandar comes, I have to get down and this guy doesn't stay in Bhayandar. He knows. Like, he knows I'm getting off. So he follows me, okay? So now while I stand up and I get off with my bag, and for me, that was the whole thing. I touched his penis, I enjoyed it. I'm 17, okay? So I'm like, this is fun. And I get off and I start getting off. This guy comes and stands behind me, first of all. And he's shorter than me at that point also. So like, he's trying to like, first of all, hump me from behind. And I'm like, ugh, whatever, but I like penis, I guess, I don't know. So, you know, and then I get off at Bhayandar and then I look behind, he's still there. He gets off with me, okay?
Right.
And he's like, Jaga hai? And I'm like, I don't know what he means. And he's just like, so while I'm walking on the bridge, he's following me also, saath mein. I'm
Right.
trying to avoid him, like he's saath mein only, he's coming.
Right.
And then like while getting off the bridge, he held my hand, dude. Like he just grabbed my hand like this. And then he puts his hand to his face. So he starts doing this, kissing on my palm. And I'm just getting scandalized more and more because I don't know how to react. Because obviously I've led him on by fucking touching his penis. But now I don't know how to get out of it. Because now wherever I go, I think he'll follow me. And I'm still a kid, right? I'm 17. So I tell him like there's a restaurant here, we can go here. Because it's a bathroom there. And so I tell him to go ahead. So he goes in the restaurant and I run away from there. And now there's nothing else to hide into. So there's only this HP gas booking station over there where my gas we used to book from. So I ran inside there and I just like, I booked gas instead of like doing anything else. So and I'm standing at the entrance of the gas place and I'm looking out and he's like, kuch tension hai, koi aapko dara raha hai kya? And I'm like, nothing. But how do I tell him that I'm a faggot who's being chased by a faggot? You know, it's kind of crazy. So then I quietly like open the door and I catch a rickshaw and I run home. So that was a very scary point because you don't know what the man will do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The second time, I would say I was working by then. I had already I was in my early 20s. There was a man called I'd say his name. I don't know why I said his name, but no one's going to look him up now. So I would travel late at night again, 2 to 11 job, remember? So I would travel 11:30 in the night, and this guy I once saw him in the train, okay. And so from the entire duration, when I got in Andheri to Bhayandar, we had just not stopped looking at each other. There was no physical whatever. It was just it was an empty train, so we didn't even take the chance of doing that in the first place. So he was standing there and I'm standing here and we're just gawking at each other, okay. And I'm and he's quite my type also. So I'm he's a berry looking guy, chubby, cute, whatever, and looks well educated or whatever. So I was yeah, cute. Then he got over at Mira Road, that's where his stop was. So he got over at Mira Road and I went and I stood by the door to see what his deal is. And instead of going, people usually get off trains and start walking, right? They go to the bridge. This guy stood there and kept staring at me. And the train moved and he kept staring and I kept staring. So it was a very, a very
intense,
romantic thing almost. Yeah. You don't have that, for queer people essentially, we don't have that narrative in our lives because this is very Bollywoodized, but no one told us that this is possible for us as well. Aankhon hi aankhon mein, we can also have feelings, So this was, I think, the beginning of December of that year. I saw him, he saw me, we forgot about each other and then we moved on. Then December 30th, the New Year ka pehle wala day, I see this guy again, okay. This time I'm traveling alone because earlier I had my friend, so I didn't take any physical steps. So this time I was alone. So I'm hey, I remember you from last time. He's yeah, I remember you as well. And then we just chatted the entire journey of the train. We just spoke. So we were just speaking and then we found very common things that he used to live in the same building as my event organizer and all that. So I'm great. So then we got over at Mira Road and I just wanted to sit on the bench with him. For the first time I was having this very naturally, built moment where I'm finally talking to a man without going to a dating site or touching his penis in the train, So, but then he also wanted the same thing. Turned out he just wanted that one night ka satisfaction. So, if Mira doesn't have a west, it only has east. There's only salt pans in the west. Yeah. So we ended up going in the salt pans and making out and rubbing each other off. And me being that stupid 20-year-old, I was wow, I really like this guy. So I'm hey, I'll meet you for New Year's. And I called him on New Year's, he didn't answer. And then I kept calling him till the 12th of Jan. Even after 12 days into January, an idiot. And he didn't answer my phone. And then years later, I found him on Grindr. And I messaged him on Grindr. He said, hi, hello. Then he asked me who I am. I showed him my face. He realized who I am and he blocked me again. Which is just the most dickish thing to do. So then after that thing, I stopped the train.
This really
endeavors.
scares me though, man. Like, I feel really scared for gay kids who and like, it's so dangerous to explore your sexuality. You know what I
Now
mean?
it's easier.
Yeah.
Now it is much like now there's so many apps. There's social media also designed. People are very aesthetically queer on their profiles. Like even that's why I envy Abhi's generation. Like even though we have 7 years gap, like a lot changed in that 7 years.
Yeah.
7 years, 6 years, whatever. Like a lot changed for them because the internet happened so massively later on. Like 2009, 2010, everything changed. So like, I feel like in that time, it was like a whole different change. 1 second, huh? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But like, I mean, just man, it just really shakes me, dude. It's like this, right? Like say hypothetically you smoke ganja, right? And you're somebody who smokes ganja and it's illegal, so you're smoking pretty much anything. And one fine day, there's more rat poison than should be, and you're
Yeah.
done. It's off. Like you end up getting sick or you end up getting dead. I mean, no, I don't know anyone who has died of such a
No,
thing.
but I wrote an entire article on Vice about this because I actually put out a story asking for like these cases, and this happens more often than you can imagine. Like even with like these new age apps that the gays have discovered, like this one called Blued. Apart from trying to just Blued, this Scruff, and these are very shady profiles because like people don't show their faces usually, and I have a joke about that as well. But in reality, the scary part is that if you don't know the face, people are like horny enough to like take that journey and go and meet them also. There was this one boy, my friend posted a story on Facebook about this guy. He was beaten black and blue, dude. Like he was bloody. His chin was broken. His lips were torn. And I'm like, what happened? And I spoke to this guy, and he told me like he had to actually leave his house to talk to me because first of all, his parents, he didn't want him to hear what he had gone through. He just told him that he got into a fight, somebody stole his phone, and he was mugged. But exactly that happened to him, but with a bunch of gay boys who I don't even know if they're gay. Just like they're hooligans who made profile over here and extorted this one young boy. And this was not even a solo scenario. It happens across the country so many times.
Yeah.
Gullible gay boys and girls and trans kids are like lured in by the idea of sex, and then like people snatch their money, they beat them up, they abuse them, and it's very common. So it's like you have to have a certain guard about yourself, and I think like I'm very lucky that day I got away from it, but it could have happened to me as well.
Yeah, that's what.
So that's what.
Ooh, that sounds scary as hell. Oh man. Now, what strikes me as very, very disturbing with this is that you were discovering your sexuality at a time when it was illegal to be of that inclination, and I mean, inclination is a mild word for what is essentially your default setting as a human being, but
Yeah.
of belonging to this default. Now with the fact that things have now been decriminalized, do you see somewhat of a reduction in the amount of blackmail type things that are happening, especially when it comes to cops on these apps and all? Or do you feel like it's, I mean, I know you've been in a relationship, but like from your sutro se kya lagta hai tere ko?
Funnily enough, I wrote the article after 377. Like this happened last year, so not much has changed. Personally, like this, the same kind of repulsion that people have. We've managed to change perspectives, yes, like through our activism, outreach, and like sure by like people existing and like doing the pride and everything. There has been a marginal like interest in like learning about our struggles and lives, and a lot of people have also been like, okay, they exist, let them exist, fine, cool, but then there's like certain amount of vitriol like on Facebook. If you go to see, especially like I always condemn Jio for this one factor that before education happened in India, we got internet in India. Like before people from the small towns could get even a 10th pass degree, they are now using Jio to like go online and spread hate. And in India, that like people are such a mess because of all the economic background situations, their homes, their families. All the outrage comes on the internet, and when they find a target, they all the bile comes out. Even now, like I get so much shit on my comments on YouTube because of like my coming out. that I have to like delete most of them because like some of them are very horrible. They're not even like human at one point, and then I'm like, okay, I don't want, because I know like a lot of queer younger kids read my comments on my and watch my video. I don't want that negativity over there. Some of them I've pinned in the past to like put in the top saying, okay, take their case.
Yeah.
But some of them are just like horrible people, and these people are like this hateful.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about that.
Yeah, I suppose that is true. I was just talking to Garib Scientist on the last podcast episode. I don't know what order this will come out in. And one of the things we were discussing is how important it is for artists to take what scientists do and bring it to people who don't quite understand science as well. Our job is to take what academia does and bring it to the masses. And I feel like that's something that that you do excellently well in that regard. I don't expect societal change out of one person's comedy career. That's not going to happen. That's crazy thought. That's crazy speak. But have you ever seen an individual change? Have you experienced something like that?
So I can't speak for people who have felt a change because no one comes and really tells you that. But one person who was vocal about it was Ruben, because Ruben's mom, in fact, was very homophobic, he would say, and like she came and saw me perform a couple of times because when he would organize the earlier downbeat comedy shows, like there were very few audience members, so like he would have his mom and sister also in the audience. Sister's pretty hip, she's cool, she understands, but his mom was the tougher exterior person. So like after a few mics, she really liked me as a person, and she was like, hey, are all gay people as funny and cute as him? And Ruben was like, yes. And then she was like, so I think like in that regard, this is a very tangible thing that I can talk to you about, because I don't know, I performed to so many people, man, like through the years. I know that when we perform to an urban audience, like performing at a Canvas or at a Hive or at a Cuckoo Club,
it's a hip crowd.
We have like, it's a hip crowd that has come, and even if there's homophobes, they won't be like, they're outnumbered. So they dare not open their mouths. We have had hecklers, people who are against gay people. I'm well enough to like shut them down. Outright, nobody's told me that, hey, you are the one. But what happened one time, I would tell you, like, which is a great example of what you're asking is, Bangalore Comedy Festival was happening. And I went in advance before my show. I was there for 10 days for the entire festival. And I would go and open for everybody I could open for. Like Sonali, Sumit, Karunesh, whoever, for you also. Like whoever I could open for as an opening act, I would be like, yes, I am performing. Come to my show also. So I remember I was opening for Sonali and it was like a room full of people. And I did my set about coming out to my mom, the whole Sarma ji ko bolo beta muh mein lete wala set, which I really love myself. Set happened, people laughed, Sonali came on, we all finished the night and everything. Next day I get a text on Instagram and I'm like, hey, he's like, hey, and he's like, you don't know me, I was in the audience last night and I was there with my friends, and I'm like, okay. He's like, I always thought my friends would be like someone who would make fun of gay people because of like, the natural ability of Indians to like call gay people names, and I'm gay myself, so I would keep my mouth shut until I saw them laughing at your set last night. I saw them like being on the pro side, being really enjoying your set, and generally they were like, the humor was like appealing to them. So I went back to work today and I came out with them and they were like so chuffed about it. And I'm like, hey, that's what I want, like it's not like I wanted to be comfortable in your own skin, but if your friends feel okay accepting you, that's even better, because then it's a chain reaction of like that helping out,
that's
right?
Great. That's clear. See, that's definite impact, dude. That's not just like a sidey thing that's happening because of your comedy. Sometimes just getting people to laugh at the same thing, that's powerful shit, man. The last thing I really wanted to talk to you about more than anything else was how you feel about like the overall representation, just sort of bringing it back to the beginning where we were in terms of the representation that the gay community and the LGBTQI community in India has. I personally don't know enough to comment on it, but like from what I've understood from you and whatever I've seen from the fringes, as an ally of sorts, I feel of sorts is weird. Anyway, I don't know, I get awkward, dude. I feel like people will just attack me when I talk about this shit, but I feel like it's kind of exclusive. It feels like an exclusive club. You know what I mean?
Not really. Like I think what happens with a lot of allies and straight people who want to like enjoy a queer party is that they're not ready for the visual cell shock. Like when you come to a gay party, it's a fucking gay party. There's cross dressing, there's loud, obnoxious music, there's drinking, and we know how to have a good time, provided that you're comfortable. If you can't watch two gay men kiss or two girls kiss, then don't come to a
Right.
gay party. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So we are not setting the rules for you to not be
Right.
inclusive. We are always like, I have hosted so many queer parties for different organizations, including
Right.
KZ, including Queer Inc. I've been very actively involved in that
Right.
scene also, in that jam space also. And I've seen like straight people who come there to be a part of it, like, hey, we're all for it. Don't come just for the upar ka part. You have to really, because it gets down and dirty, okay? Like at a party also, like I've also hosted events where like, there's actual HIV testing happening, okay? There's people looking out for the community also. So the reason that we have a sort of exclusivity to our events is because we are scared of our lifestyle not being accepted outside. Like when Abhi and I go to a gay party, we do become flamboyant. We're not like our usual versions because we know that we'll find utmost acceptance
Yeah.
over there. We can be our absolute
No,
selves,
this is very
But at a normal club, we won't
It's
feel
interesting that you said bring this up because I was having a conversation with somebody a couple of months ago, and the conversation was on the lines of this is a person who's bi, and he was telling me ki, yaar, like it's so hard to get people on the fence to accept you when their only realization of what a gay person is based on the Pride Parade. And why do gay people have to be so extreme on the Pride Parade? And I'm like, but you're forgetting the 364 days a year that person is forced to not let anything out. You know what I mean? In public.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, perhaps.
And that's like, I have even like some of my closest queer friends, like this one guy, I won't take his name, he's pretty famous now because he does ads and all. He's queer, but he had his audacity to tell me, like the fucking gall of that person. He came to my podcast, not only my podcast, he came to Cyrus's podcast because he was too high profile to come to my show, like a cunt. He says that I don't come for the Pride, I come for the after party, the photo shoot. Like when the Pride's ending, when the press gathers, he comes for that part. And I'm like, do you have a modicum of shame? Like we fucking go out there and put ourselves out there saying that, hey, we exist and we're fighting the bigger fight. You are just coming for the brownie points. And I that's the fact that there's queer people within the scene also who are just like so nonchalant towards the fucking thing that, oh, somebody else had to fight for you. Nas Foundation had to go and do an affidavit. Then 5 people had to appeal. Keshav Surya had to go and file for the court case. And that's how Trisensen went away. Not with your faggot ass sitting in the fucking house and being like, oh, I'm just going to show up with my makeup. No, bitch. Fucking shit the fuck down. I get so angry because of this. Because of the very reason that the movement does not belong to you. If you don't put your fucking hands in the blood, you don't get to say that, oh, so-and-so queer community, so-and-so. No, then you're out of the community. Fuck off. I become very riled up because I feel very passionately about this. Because I got my hands dirty. I just didn't talk about it. I actually went ahead and did shit, okay? So I know for a fact that this is not an easy thing to just talk and be done with it. You have to become bigger than that. You have to take everybody along with you. You are not a solo queer entity. Oh, I'm on TV now, so I'm done. No. What about the trans brethren? Because they're suffering. They're getting killed. What the fuck are you doing for them? So that's where my anger comes from. Because I'm just like, this whole possibility, like when people are lesbian and gay, the main fact is, oh, I'm a woman who likes women, so I can pass as a woman. I'm a man who likes men, so I can pass as a man. And then my life is sorted because now Section 377 has made sure I'm okay. But what about the trans bill? What about the Nalsa judgment that was still like, in debate after so many years? What about that? Like, what about asexual people, intersex people? What about, giving health benefits to all of these people, jobs to all of these people? No one talks about that. They are like, so within the queer community also there's like this whole Savarna Brahmanical culture, which is like upper tier Hindu gay boys, right-wing Hindus who will be like still Modi supporting, Amit Shah supporting, while everybody else can go fuck themselves. So it is disparate, especially now after 2020, after the whole CA NRC bill, the whole community's edges are literally snatched. That's a gay term, but they're like very obviously like in disparity now more than ever. So good time to like talk about it because I personally have been very vocal about this whole tribe of right-wing gay boys who are like holier than thou because they don't understand that once the other minorities are done for, they are coming next for you. You are not safe. So shut the fuck up.
I find this such an oxymoron, it sounds like almost, right? Like right-wing conservative gay people.
Even right now in America, you will see like gays for Trump, right? like they're putting their own fucking fists up their own mouths and their
But
assholes
it's so
at the same
interesting
time. They
to
don't
me that
realize.
like if anybody has a doubt कि like ये लोग तो ऐसा हमारे जैसा नहीं रहता है, clearly रहता है क्योंकि ये लोग में
Yeah.
भी है right winger.
हमारे में भी है prejudice है, you know. There's biphobia, there's transphobia, there's sexism, there's misogyny. All of this exists within the community. And for the first part of my career, I only spoke about highlighting the issues that we face, but now I'm opening up to like highlighting the issues that we are creating also within ourselves. So I think it's fair game by now, you know.
Yeah. Ah. Whew. I feel like like full energy vibes now.
I'm very politicized because of this only, because again, like Abhi and I, we spend hours discussing about like how angry it makes us that we are still in this situation in this country. Like we are not, you know, like how modern day feminism in India has also lost its way. Like Kangana Ranaut will talk about her being attacked as a woman, while a Dalit woman is being like raped
Yeah.
and killed. That's the situation in the queer community. Very similar only. Like we are like, oh, I'm sitting in a Pali house and I'm like, oh, somebody called me a faggot and that's bad for me. A trans person was butchered to death. Her body was thrown in the Washi Creek. What the fuck are you
Yeah.
talking about? You know what I'm saying? So that's the level of disparity that we are living in.
Oof. Man, I think this is gonna give a lot of people a lot to think about. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really hope so, man. I hope that you have listened to this and are going to think about some shit tonight, man.
Listen, understand, okay? Don't talk.
Hey, man, Naveen, thank you for doing this, dude. This has been an enlightening hour.
Yeah, and it's also so weird, like to be on this other receiving end, because we both interviewed people together on
Yeah.
Vartalab, and we were always keeping in cash. But you told me way before this AMF recording happened that this will get intense. You will have to dig into
Yeah.
stuff which you are not really comfortable digging into. But I wear my life on a
Yeah.
sleeve, man. I have no fucks to
Yeah.
give any.
But
So,
I
like,
hope it was
yeah,
everything
so-
that I built it up to be.
Definitely, like I've cussed out right wing Hindus. My job is done. You know?
Yeah, I also hope, like, as my original co-host, I feel like I don't know, like you're the gold standard. If you think I'm hosting well, then I'm like, okay, chalo, to ye isme hai hope. That's why I waited so
Yeah.
long to do it also.
I've been watching all the episodes, like the way you've been like talking to everybody, and I like how you like get in the niche of what they are as people, and then like bring the flavor
Yeah.
out, which is what we love to do as podcast
Yeah.
hosts, and generally like the nature of this medium itself is to like get into it deeper. Otherwise, we have like we
can
have
just make
Kapil Sharma for doing the over
you can just review kids getting beaten up or whatever. Yeah, that's also an
Yeah.
option that we have. I'm gonna go to hell. Okay,
Never.
man. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for listening, patrons. Thank you so much for watching, listening, etc. You guys are keeping this first season afloat. That's all for this week. We'll be back next week. I don't know when this goes out. So आएंगे. तुम डरो मत. तुम बस आगे बढ़ते रहो. 52 करने हैं, 52 होंगे. See you guys. Take care. शबा खैर, etc.